just a lot of smoke and mirrors, a lot of loud talking, a lot of yelling and screaming, and like I said, you and I, we could just point out Cortex Labs over and over again. That's the classic example of someone
Yeah.
that is playing doctor without a medical license, that has no medical degree, no college degree. Actually, it's on his right there. I got to just Google it. High school dropout. But he is convinced he knows what he's talking about, but he does not. And that's
Who are you to question the world's leading expert in erectile dysfunction?
I am here to make good, high-quality, targeted, useful content for men that are on TRT. I am not here to fucking bicker back and forth with two angry men. All right, so good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Hey, look, guys, I didn't plan to be here today doing this content and looking at these two individuals in front of us. I had planned to do the normal content that I do, which is reaching out to people in the TRT community and giving solid advice based on years of consulting and coaching and almost 2 decades studying the scientific literature around neuroscience, physiology, and endocrinology. That was what I was going to do today. But unfortunately, it appears as if we're going to have to take just a 1-day break from doing that so that I can respond to this video that was done over the weekend or Friday or something, titled TRT Influencers and Myths versus Facts. Who do you trust? Now, look, on the left, I know a lot of you guys know who these guys are, but I'll just quick name them, is Dr. Keith Nichols. He's owner, founder of Tier 1 Health and Wellness. He's an actual MD. His board certifications, I believe, are in physical medicine and rehabilitation. Okay, so Keith is not an endocrinologist. I just want to make that clear. And on the right, you've got man medicine. This is the guy that I think a lot of us have been a fan of his YouTube channel, including me, for various pieces of content. His name is Andrew Winge. He is also a doctor, and his certifications are family medicine and emergency medicine. And he was also active duty Air Force, which I can respect. We'll talk about my military career and how it's relevant to this video in just a few. But the base of the video, as you can probably surmise from looking at the title, was TRT Influencers and Myths versus Facts. Who do you trust? Now, I'll let you judge what the undertone is. You should probably go watch the entire thing. I don't want to dissuade anyone from, listening to other people's free speech and watching the whole thing. But what's clear to me is how it comes across is it's two doctors saying, hey, this is who we think you should trust regarding TRT advices, and this is who we think you shouldn't trust. And oddly, because it's just a bit uncanny how they approach this, they either name me directly by name or indirectly refer to me throughout the duration of the hour and 20-minute video in an attempt to disparage me, discredit me, tarnish my reputation, and by extension, disrupt my business and my influence in the TRT community, which is not something that I expected. However, this falls in the realm of free speech. These guys have their rights to go and speak their opinions on the internet, however they see fit. That said, I'd like to talk to both of you, Dr. Keith Nichols and Dr. Andrew Winge. So Keith and Andrew, I know that you're with me at this point. You decided to go and execute your free speech on the internet, and that's perfectly fine. You have the right to do that. But I hope when you were doing it and as you did it and now that it's done, you understand that I have the right to execute mine as well. So if you want to bark up that tree, I hope that you're sufficiently prepared to deal with the response, both in the comments in your video. I mean, you guys had effectively gotten roasted for some of the things that you had said, and this response from me. I didn't ask for this. I didn't name call either of you. I didn't discuss either of you negatively. I didn't disparage you. I didn't attempt to harm your business in any way. I think just people should learn to decide who they want to trust based on what they're seeking and who gives the targeted advice that's relevant to their problems, right? You guys think you're experts. The people will decide. All right, so we're going to get into the video now, but I just want to say in summation, to the both of you, I didn't ask for this. I listened to the bulk of this discussion and several pieces of it several times, and I kind of understand at some level where you guys are coming from, and there are some pieces of advice that I would give you relative to your guys' confidence in growing your YouTube channels, among other things, as well as how to think about me, because it certainly seems that you're confused about this. But since it's your reach to get up on the internet and say, here are misconceptions that flood the hormone space, and here's who we think you should trust, I've got the right to respond to that. But you both are big boys. You knew that when you did the video, so let's get into it.
And so all the social media influencers out there, though, are they're very charismatic. The ones that have the time to put out videos every day or every other day, they're very polished. They have great, I don't even know what the word for it is, except it's just great videos. Everything's very it is enticing. It's like watching a movie almost, if you know what I mean. But unfortunately, it's just filled with misinformation, and that's what sucks people in hook, line, and sinker. Dr. Morgenthaler, as brilliant as he is, gets very few views, and he should be getting millions of views. And then you've got these influencers out there that are providing so much misinformation, but they're so convincing. And I think the more they scream and yell, or the more views they get, and they're getting hundreds of thousands of hits.
All right, so just to unpack a couple things, one of the primary things that Dr. Nichols was saying is that a what I would consider like a kind of a TRT discussion, TRT advice, TRT norms titan. His name is Abraham Morgenthaler. I've watched pretty much every piece of content that Morgenthaler has put out there on the web. He's like a doctor who's discussed TRT, has been very instrumental in making it a lot more acceptable, in reversing some of the medical establishment's positions on, their proposed ideas that TRT is deleterious for people. So we respect Dr. Morgenthaler for that. The point that they're attempting to make is, how are TRT influencers that aren't, in their opinion, up to the level in terms of knowledge and understanding of physiology, equal to or relatively close to the prowess of Dr. Morgenthaler? How are these individuals getting hundreds of thousands of views, and how are they popular? And I just want to make one thing clear. Yeah, I absolutely think Morgenthaler is like a stud. He's a highly intelligent doctor, and I've watched a good degree of his videos. But just to make it clear for the both of you, because there's some things that you guys allude to later which imply that you really don't understand how this works. That's not how it works. You can know precisely what it is you're talking about regarding any element of physiology, and because you lack the gumption, the charisma, and the actual technical marketing prowess, no one will watch your content. And that is likely what I think may have happened regarding Morgenthaler and anybody who thinks they're an expert, is an expert, claims to be an expert. In the end, there's no injustice there. There's just competency and efficacy in delivering your information and your message out to the public. And then there's a lack thereof. And I think that theme of competency is going to come up a little further as we go down the line here, but I just wanted to clear that up.
And unfortunately, it's filled with misinformation, as you know. And I think that people are drawn to that, unfortunately. And I don't, they're like moths to a flame.
It's tough in the TRT space because when you go out and try to become an informed, there's all these competing voices. And so, in your opinion, like how do you get through the noise? How do you tell the guy who's got the slick YouTube video that's like a 9-minute video on a subject that, like Estradiol, for example, that to do justice like you did is a 4-hour video. Like that's, you did that topic justice, but they pop out a 7 to 9 minute video with a bunch of sound bites and talking points. How do you compete against that?
All those influencers out there, they have a working surface knowledge of testosterone and physiology, but they do not have a deep understanding of the true physiology, because that takes a lot of time and effort to understand. I think you have these self-proclaimed experts out there, and people see them as experts, unfortunately, because the more videos they put out, it means they must be experts. Nothing could be further from this. We look at Cortex Labs. The more information he puts out there, the more, every time we watch a video, we do this back and forth. It's just filled with, he doesn't understand the physiology at all, but yet he is convinced he knows what he's talking about, but he does not. And that's
who are you to question the world's leading expert in erectile dysfunction?
That is
man on TRT. How dare you?
So I'll just respond to a little bit of this, because I'm not going to get into the going back and forth with these two. First of all, I think it's noteworthy to take note of Andrew's response. I mean, did you see the way that he just said, who are you to question the TRT erectile function, wizard, or however he ended up saying it? It reflects to me a certain degree of toxicity, which to me says that the guy has watched my content and has been some degree disgruntled or neurotic about me for quite a long time. And listen, Andrew, I don't want that for you. I've been a fan of your content for quite a long time. I think one of the first videos that I came across is like a pretty deep dive that you did on HCG, and I respect and appreciate your knowledge and then your specific research into that topic. And I'm sorry that you feel this way about me. I don't know what your experience is with helping people with erectile dysfunction, whether through what seems to be very limited, consumption of my content. I'm not sure where you've gotten the idea that I am a novice regarding erectile physiology and how TRT interplays with that. Up until this point, I would have been very happy to maybe do a podcast with you and discuss with you what I've come to learn doing deep dives in the scientific journals regarding DHT, erectile physiology, estradiol, erectile physiology, testosterone, erectile physiology, general erectile physiology. Now, one of the things that is sort of a repeated theme that Keith mentioned is that, influencers have a base level of understanding about physiology and TRT, but not a deeper level. And because, getting that deeper level of understanding of both general physiology as well as endocrinology relative to TRT takes time. And this is absolutely positively true. But what I don't really understand and what I'm prepared to defend here is that I've taken that time. I do not have a medical degree like you guys, but it should be noted that your guys' degrees are not in endocrinology, nor are they in anything remotely similar to testosterone replacement therapy. In fact, I have been hired by actual physicians, and many of them in my time as an entrepreneur, giving advice on various aspects of physiology. So actual MDs have hired me and explained to me this stuff isn't taught in medical school, right? At the same time, that comment assumes that this right now, what you may be seeing, my presentation on YouTube, is the effective beginning of my deep dives into the scientific literature, which is profoundly untrue. You can go back 10 years, that's an entire decade on the internet, and find me discussing physiology, mainly neuroscience. I've actually studied starting from neuroscience and then transitioning into hormones, among other things. I've learned a lot about the complexities of the intestinal microbiome. I've heavily studied the various types of reflux, whether traditional acidic reflux or non-acidic pepsin-based non-acid types of reflux like laryngopharyngeal reflux, deep dives into gastroenterology, trying to understand things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and of course, testosterone replacement therapy, endocrinology in general, obviously very generally, physiology, anatomy, deep nuance study in injection frequency nuance, DHT, estradiol balance nuance, testosterone ester nuances, HCG, dose, frequency nuances, subjective sexual dysfunction marker nuances, and as you guys probably know, the nuances of hyperestrogenism and its negative effects on male sexual function, the nuance of DHT's primary role in erectile physiology. And a lot of this deep dive into the scientific literature actually spans 18 years. I started this in 2000 when I got out of the United States Army. It is now 2026. So I understand what Doc's saying. Listen, if you have a base level and you've just sort of begun discussing this stuff or getting into the literature, you'll have a base level, architecture of how physiology works to the extent that you've spent the hour studying some degree of it, but the deeper stuff will take many more man hours and years for you to acquire. Well, I've been putting in that work since 2008. In fact, I've been on the internet talking about physiology for longer than the both of you. All right, let's continue.
That That is correct. And I think you're well aware that that's what he claims to be from,
I know.
And, that's somebody with no medical training at all. And
True.
people will say, well, so you're saying that, so they think, oh, you pompous doctors. You have to,
I know.
you mean you have to have
hear that.
medical training, know everything? You've pointed this out. There are some rigors of training. I mean, we had to go through a lot to learn that physiology. And when we watch these videos with guys like that, we know the physiology. We know the deeper layers, and they don't, and we can see it, but yet they're so convincing to the normal person out there. They're just so convincing, and we're not near as convincing. You and I are boring.
Oh no,
real
not at all.
Real physiology, real medicine, real literature is boring.
I wouldn't characterize real physiology or real medicine as boring. In fact, those things are the most interesting things to me. Some people have knacks and specialties and things that they're drawn to. I wouldn't call it medicine, but I would call it understanding physiology, particular health problems. And now, of course, these days, endocrinology, TRT, historically neuroscience, these are the things that I am very interested in because they're not boring. But what is boring are individuals that don't have any degree of gumption, charisma, or confidence in both their understanding of said elements of physiology and their delivery, which comes across as boring. So I think that's just a weird statement. There's nothing about the physiology that is boring. It's actually really super interesting. And if either of you are having a hard time with your level of confidence or speaking skills, eloquence, verbal fluency, then I think that's the basis of what we're really discussing here. I mean, all of this stuff is not boring at all. But if your delivery is not executed in such a way where you're captivating individuals, how are you going to get them to listen to you, right? It's certainly not going to take place via you getting on a platform and disparaging other people. That's a fast way, as shown in your comments on this video, to get people to effectively just discredit you and to not respect you anymore. I mean, you guys lost a lot of followers on this effective hit piece on me, and I just don't understand it. All right, so let's continue.
Let's face it, it's not exciting. It's not, like these guys are putting it out to be. And unfortunately, there's no competing against that because that's the mindset of the general public at this time. And it's unfortunate, but it is true. And I don't deny that it's not true. It's true. It's true. But
it's
luckily,
true.
We cater to the individuals that are not fooled by that. I'm proud of the ones that I see that come to me that say, I see through it. I see through it. I see through that that smoke and mirrors.
All right. So again, on the topic of you guys wanted to execute your free speech, I hope that and it's perfectly okay that you were able to do that. I hope that you're prepared for me to execute mine. Doc Nichols is saying that there are people that come to him and specifically say, I see through the Cortex lab guys' nonsense or smoke and mirrors, and I'm glad I do, and I'm here with you. Here's the truth of the matter about patients from Dr. Keith Nichols that have come to me for TRT advice. There are a lot of men and not just one. And if anybody's curious about these individuals' names and if they're okay with those names being publicized or shared between people, you can email me at ryan@livecortex.com. These were Dr. Nichols' patients that had come my way for advice, suffering through the advice and the protocols that Nichols suggested or prescribed with erectile dysfunction, among other problems. These are his patients that are suffering. That Nichols is very stubborn, dogmatic approach about TRT. It's much more like a one size fits all. And if you don't listen to me, you're doing TRT wrong and you don't understand the physiology. Well, that approach has gotten guys with full blown erectile dysfunction, and those guys, as defectors of Dr. Nichols, have come to me for advice. So again, totally okay that you said that, but I hope you understand that I can now say, and I can prove this if anyone needs proof of this, that Nichols' patients have come my way through having a litany of problems on TRT that to me are usually very easily solvable by the things that I discuss on the channel, i.e. DHT, estrogen balance, estrogen being an over range for you, host of other things. And we did end up getting those guys squared away. All right, let's continue.
And so, and that's the problem. And, those guys, they think they know everything. And I think that you and I have talked about that before, is that, whoever desires to learn has to begin by acknowledging their own ignorance. And you and I acknowledge our own ignorance all.
Yes, right. I had learned this back in, I want to say it was 2009 when I started reading success books like Think and Grow Rich, books about the human psyche, books about neuroscience. So that was kind of the beginning of my study time. That one of the major pillars of intelligence is knowing what you don't know. Again, there's a large undertone of effectively underestimating everyone else. It sort of gives light to the idea that these two think they are mightier than thou. And I think they're both wildly intelligent human beings with a lot of historical achievements and knowledge and stuff. But it's just when you get on your platform to disparage other people and not consider what they might know already and just make assumptions on how limited their understanding is of the world, it's just a kind of a strange look. Yes, I understand what I don't know. I am perfectly willing to admit that there are things related to physiology, TRT. At the tissue level, that's where I think none of us really understand a good degree of what the hell is going on. I'm learning every day. I admit that. I certainly don't know everything about TRT, but I certainly have come to learn nearly 2 decades ago the simple principle of intelligence, which is to know what you don't know. In other words, be cognizant of what you don't know in your grand understanding of what you do know. So again, it's just a large underestimation of my intelligence, and that's a common theme that we'll see as we move forward. Let's continue.
Every day.
Every day. But yet these guys don't. You'll never hear them say, "I don't know," or and the reason is because, as Epictetus said, it's impossible to begin to learn that which one thinks one already knows. They think they know everything. And see, we know how little we do know. Even though we learn and learn every day, we strive to learn every day. We realize as we learn every day how much more we have to learn. And that's a big difference. That's the big difference. And, we're not out there trying to generate income and money by selling people things. Look at all those guys like Cortex Labs.
Okay, no, I won't really touch on this, but this is more a dig at capitalism. Listen, Dr. Nichols has his own branded clinic / companies like wallpaper behind him. His YouTube information and whatever other marketing material that they put out there serves to bring new customers in to generate income. Okay. So, taking a dig at my ability as a non-college educated person, we'll get into my education, here in a bit, being able to then go and do deep dives in literature around the various topics that I discussed over the course of 18 years, and then discuss these things with competence on the web and create useful digital products and create useful consulting services for people that solve major problems. Everybody has a right to do that. Remember what country we are in. This is a capitalistic country which foundations are built somewhat on entrepreneurship, right? The ability for people to create resources where there weren't resources and make something out of themselves. So rather than acknowledging and appreciating what I've done as an individual regarding Cortex Labs, the business, my knowledge, my eloquence regarding physiology, and then specifically TRT, my ability to have the gumption, the confidence, and the intellectual capacity, as well as the creativity and the technical capacity to go and create these, as Dr. Nichols said, like cinematic-like videos. None of this is acknowledged as good or recognized as skillful at all. It's just a dig at my attempt to create income from what I'm doing. So I just wanted to highlight that while ensuring that folks know that Doc's logo being promoted is directly behind him.
It's just a lot of smoke and mirrors, a lot of loud talking, a lot of yelling and screaming. And, like I said, you and I, we could just point out Cortex Labs over and over again. That's the classic example of someone that is playing doctor without a medical license, that has no medical degree, no college degree. Actually, it's on his right there. I got to just Google it, high school dropout, but yet he's giving everybody medical advice.
Okay, so this is a big one, and there's a couple things that I'd want to address, because if you're going to take the advice of Dr. Keith Nichols on this, you assume, therefore, that he is telling you the truth. That statement that I am, in fact, a high school dropout exclusively and nothing else is not true. I was emancipated at the age of 17. I then went on to get a general education diploma, which is the equivalent of a high school diploma. and joined the United States Army. I went to OSUT, or effectively boot camp, and then AIT, or Advanced Individual Training, as a 19 Delta in Fort Knox, Kentucky. I then was stationed with a scout platoon, a cavalry scout platoon, which was my military occupational specialty, in Fort Hood, Texas, where I trained stateside to prepare for a deployment to Iraq. 2005, I then did deploy to Iraq and fought in the Iraq War during the surge of 2007 in one of the most dangerous sectors of that country, just outside of Sadr City. I was, in many cases, in charge of millions of dollars worth of equipment that trust was put in me by the United States government. And I served as a dismount, a gunner, and in many cases, a leader of a specialty scout sniper platoon that was based out of Fob Rustamaya, which is now named, I think, something else these days, just outside of Sadr City and just in the outskirts of Hababiyah in Iraq. My platoon made national news for the individuals that we lost, for some of the very notable, very famous battles that we were in, as well as some of the missions that we executed on high priority, high value targets in Iraq, and some of the things that we accomplished in what was a 16-month, 15-month deployment. Yeah, we had gotten extended because at the time the Secretary of Defense at the time, Robert Gates, had extended every individual unit. My unit being 1st Battalion, 8th Cavalry Regiment, 1st Cavalry Division, United States Army, out of Fort Hood, Texas, an additional 3 months on top of the already scheduled deployment time frame. Well, that deployment was over. I then came back to the United States, and for the ensuing, it was about 6 or 7 months until I ETS'd out of the Army, I trained the next generation of Cav Scouts, combat reconnaissance soldiers, who were going to and did actually go and cycle back through to both Iraq and Afghanistan, preparing them to go to war. Those were some of my responsibilities after I had gone back from my tour in combat in Iraq. Now, in 2008, I left the United States Army, a decorated combat veteran. The conditions of the economy at the time were pretty bleak. This is when, if those of you that remember, the mortgage-backed securities market crashed, and the cataclysm that was the economic crash or depression of 2008 took place. Right? If you've ever seen the movie Margin Call, that's what that's about. So I get to the Army during that time and look around. I paid a lot of attention to that specifically in deciding like what I was going to do. And considering who I am, do I love taking instruction from people? Do I really want to have freedom? Do I want to have a cap on my salary? What do I know? I considered being a state police officer. I considered being a prison guard. I considered doing more military stuff. I decided instead to not use the GI Bill. So the United States Army, based on my time in, would have paid for my college if I decided to take that route, but I decided against that, and to take the route of starting a business. So we've discussed my deep dives into the scientific literature. Again, I've been studying physiology in general, endocrinology, hormones, TRT, neuroscience for just about 18 years. It's almost 2 decades. But at that point, what really started me down that path was my experiences with PTSD, which stemmed from a few events, but one particular event where, we lost a staff sergeant named Marlon Harper. And the details, the visuals, just kind of what we had to deal with surrounding that incident. Yeah, I mean, look, struggled to deal with that, as well as had a hard time reintegrating into American society after having done all of that, gone to war and served as a gunner at a dismount and went on combat patrols nearly every day of our time and that whole 15-month period, which led me down the path of nootropics, chemicals that exert various elements of neurochemical modulation, so that I could get control of anxiety that I had at the time, among other things. And that naturally, as time went on, evolved into hormones and then later on TRT. So the question of my legitimacy, I think it's important for us to now understand exactly where I came from. I'm not a high school dropout. I'm a person that very decisively made the decision to exit high school, get a general education diploma, and join the United States Army to go serve in war. Now, a lot of people had alluded to this in your guys' comment section on this, but listen, because I decided not to take the traditional route of going through the medical orthodoxy to get a medical degree and do residency and fellowship and all this stuff and end up working maybe in a hospital or at someone's practice to eventually start my own practice and go through your guys' process, I just started to approach it from a different way. I mean, initially I wasn't particularly thinking I was going to be doing business relative to physiology. That's just kind of how it turned out. But I will have, I've started various other companies. One, my most successful company prior to Cortex Labs was an iPad and iPhone repair company, in which we fixed iPad and iPhone screens for people locally in a store that I had built in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, as well as nationally for big brands. I mean, some of my clients were Olympus. This is a multi-million dollar, potentially multi-billion dollar corporation, and Crayola, the crayon company. These are companies that had contracts with me. The seeming illegitimate person that you're trying to depict, I'm not sure the degree of my illegitimacy if I'm able to create contracts with worldwide brands and they trusted me to work on their technology. This is true, and this can all be verified. So I just wanted to clear that up. That's actually my history. If anyone wants more of a deep dive on that, you can feel free to email me at ryan@lifecortex.com. If anybody needs any degree of proof regarding any of that, I have everything, including my ETS or discharge paperwork from the United States military, all my various awards, my combat action badge, my various RCON contracts in previous companies where, again, we were hired by major brands that trusted us to deal with their technological issues and provide solutions. So I needed to make that clear. Listen, Keith, if you're going to get on the internet and you're going to discuss me in an attempt to discredit me, disparage me personally, and also tarnish the reputation of my business, I would advise you to do your research first, because frankly, the way that you presented it, because of how false it was, it just kind of makes you look a little, it's a look that I wouldn't want for myself from the perspective of wanting to be professional. I mean, listen, Keith, you want people to trust you. You want people to think that you're a legitimate person giving them advice. I don't think that the best way to do that is to lie about other human beings on your public platform. So I'm not going to go through the rest of it because, again, they make various indirect references to me throughout the duration of this video, and they also name me directly. And a good degree of this kind of rests on this notion that Dr. Keith Nichols believes regarding the real cause of sexual dysfunction on testosterone replacement therapy. Again, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I've dealt with a lot of people over the years that have had their lives ruined by both bad protocols as well as hair loss drugs and sexual dysfunction generally, where we've worked to resolve some of those problems. And Nichols did a big, long lecture. It's many hours long. I've watched it multiple times, and I've watched multiple parts of it multiple times, in which, besides some discussion around aromatase inhibitors, he tried to make the point that serotonin is, in fact, the cause of sexual dysfunction that men experience on TRT, and that it is not estrogen. I would urge people to go watch it and decide for yourself, but also go look at the literature that the doctor pointed to, which he claims proves that serotonin is the cause of sexual dysfunction on TRT, but which the literature does not prove. He's merely making a correlation between testosterone and estradiol's effect on both serotonin concentrations, serotonin receptor expression, and general serotonergic activity, and sexual dysfunction on TRT. The theory of which is actually driven by Dr. Keith Nichols' personal experience with the use of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which caused something called PSSD in him, otherwise known as post-SSRI sexual dysfunction, in which he had some of the common symptoms of anorgasmia, erectile dysfunction, libido dysfunction. His struggles dealing with that and the symptoms therein have, through his personal N=1 bias, influenced him to believe that serotonergic signaling is the cause of sexual dysfunction for men that are on TRT and not estradiol. And I think for Doc's journey, good on him. Great job trying to do a deep dive in the scientific literature and give your opinion on some of the correlations that you're making on said scientific literature. I want to make it clear that from a scientific perspective, none of what you said, Keith, was conclusive. The papers that you pointed out did not conclude in any definitive way that serotonergic signaling is responsible for sexual dysfunction on TRT. Yes, we know that serotonin does effectively put the brakes on sexual function via a variety of mechanisms, largely the inhibition of dopaminergic neuron firing. Serotonin is prolactogenic, which disrupts male sexual function. But nowhere in the literature that you cited proves that serotonin is the cause of sexual dysfunction on TRT. In fact, if anybody wants to either confirm or deny your theory, and I think, Doc, you should be cognizant of the fact that there have been other people that have been working in sexual dysfunction for decades now, me included. I'd have you consider either telling your patients or anyone considering, wanting to confirm or deny this, just taking a serotonin antagonist. If you're having sexual dysfunction on TRT and Nichols asserts that the problem is serotonergic signaling, just block the serotonin receptors. You can do that with a drug called cyproheptadine. It is a very potent serotonin antagonist as well as a mild cholinergic receptor antagonist. And if you think this is true, you can't get dialed in on TRT in terms of erections, sensation, libido, climax function, and you're taking Doc's word for this and want to confirm or deny it, then just get your hands on some cyproheptadine, dose said cyproheptadine, and see if the problem resolves. The problem with that theory is that I've already proven that taking serotonin receptor antagonists or blocking, in some sense, serotonergic signaling does not solve a TRT-induced or otherwise sexual dysfunction that is related to men that are on testosterone replacement therapy. And I had proved this within my own body of work a little bit more than 5 years ago. Remember, Keith, I have been discussing and working with men regarding sexual dysfunction for many years. There are videos of me on the internet discussing the use of serotonin receptor antagonists more than 5 years ago. All of that is public record. Men had come to me with problems with sexual dysfunction on TRT a lot longer ago than a mere 5 years ago. And serotonin receptor antagonists were actually one of the things that we explored to try to resolve that problem, because I too had the theory that serotonin was playing a role based on testosterone and estradiol's modulation of serotonergic activity. And the actual scientific attempts to confirm or deny that showed me very clearly that it is not serotonergic activity that is responsible for causing sexual dysfunction on TRT. In fact, it's very clear that with your particular case, Keith, it is potentially some excess serotonergic activity that may be happening, or we could call it dysregulated serotonergic activity that may still be present as a result of your use of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. I think it should also be noted in summation in regard to Doc's argument about serotonin being the cause of sexual dysfunction. Again, first of all, just go ahead and block serotonin receptor activity or serotonergic signaling, and when your sexual function problems do not resolve, you have proved Doc's theory wrong. And Doc, I hope that you'd be willing to accept that or go and run an experiment, but potentially with some of your patients or yourself, or specifically people that are on TRT with sexual dysfunction, interfering with the serotonergic signaling and thus restoring sexual function. I think the only way that you're going to actually prove your position on that is if you do something like that. So please keep that in mind. I would also have people understand that, based on the entirety of the theory, because let's be clear that is a theory at this point. This is not proven science whatsoever, is based on Dr. Keith Nichols' N=1, which is an irresponsible way to give advice to people large scale on TRT, and in this case through the medium of YouTube with a 4-hour lecture. Actually, Dr. Nichols, your 4-hour lecture was terribly irresponsible, scientifically inaccurate, easily refutable, and displays to us all one really important truth. You are willing to disparage other individuals for not following the science. You are willing to sit on your self-proclaimed expert level status high horse and say to people, you're wrong because you don't operate from the scientific literature. And then in the same breath, you're willing to contend that something that is not proven in the scientific literature is true. But I don't think you anticipated someone with the competency and the intellectual capacity recognizing your error and calling you out. Because I know that both of you referred to me as Cortex and Cortex Labs. My name is Ryan Michael Ballo. And to the both of you, it should be sir. You two individuals, Man Medicine, frankly, I'm surprised by your remarks, by how disturbed you were when you said that I was the erectile function expert. Just kind of that look on your face was filled with toxicity, and I feel bad about that. I don't want you to be disturbed mentally and effectively neurotic about me on the internet. I mean, you can reach out to me at any time and talk about any of this. But I know we fundamentally disagree on a few critical things, but namely, it is estradiol. I mean, let the record show that Dr. Andrew Winge, or Man Medicine, which I find a little bit ironic, actually takes a good degree of exogenous estradiol on top of TRT. And I want to have people ask themselves the question, are you sure that you want to trust and listen to a person regarding TRT and TRT advice that is on TRT that takes exogenous estrogen? Is that the man that you want to be taking your TRT advice from? I'll end on this. There's a large undertone that, hey, these experienced doctors, you guys don't really love our content. Our content doesn't get a lot of views and we're not reaching as many people. But these guys who are out here, in their opinion, BSing, i.e. people like me and some of the other folks that they mentioned, you're disgruntled that we are influencing people and their decisions around TRT, their sex life, their sexual function, etc. Okay. I would like for you, regarding Abraham Morgenthaler, regarding either of you individuals, to point out to me a single instance in which you've gone into very pristine detail around sexual function and TRT and fixing some of the biggest problems. You guys make it as if most men on TRT do not have issues. In fact, the forums are populated with these individuals. I agree that it is probably not a disproportionate amount of people, but it is many more people than you would have folks led to believe. And the problem is there aren't people out there that are discussing the nuances of erectile physiology, DHT and erectile physiology, estradiol, its inhibition of some of the nitric oxide signaling in the penis. We know estradiol is prolactogenic. You can actually spontaneously create prolactinomas by giving rats estradiol. And you guys probably understand that it's because it blocks dopamine's ability to bind to the D2 receptors on the pituitary. I'm sure you guys understand this. I'm not sure why you don't recognize it publicly. There is absolutely a direct connection between estradiol and negative outcomes in terms of erectile quality in men, but you guys have chosen to support your idea to cherry pick the other pieces of literature which either show no effect, because none of them, by the way, show a positive effect. There's no single piece of scientific literature that shows us estradiol is pro-erectile. Find me that literature. There are, however, plenty of pieces of literature, as I've described on various pieces of content on this channel, that show us a direct correlation. But I'm not here to argue estradiol. This is what I want to say to everybody. Due to the pro-estrogen camp's refusal to name estradiol as a source, not the entire source, not the sole contributor, but a source of erectile and libido problems on TRT, the discussion usually cites scapegoats like thyroid hormones, and in this case, serotonin. So when people go down all those routes, resolve their body fat problems, optimize their thyroid hormones, fix their liver issues that never actually existed to begin with, and the sexual dysfunction then isn't resolved, take serotonin blocking drugs or serotonin receptor blocking drugs, and the sexual function problems still persist, where do they go? What options are people left with than to seek out the people on social media in this case, or YouTube in my case directly, that are talking directly about their problem? Look, if you guys are looking to attract and solve problems for people with erectile dysfunction that are on TRT, do content on resolving erectile dysfunction on TRT. Instead of using neurotransmitters as scapegoats here, when we have a study showing us quite clearly that estradiol in certain concentrations in relation to androgens have a negative effect on penile vascular function, is exactly the reason people tune you guys out and end up on channels like mine. Because I'm the guy that's dealing with guys with erectile dysfunction on TRT every day. Some of whom, as I said before, for the record, are defectors from Dr. Nichols's clinic, where they came to me with ED based on following Keith's suggestions. You guys are disgruntled about why influencers are out here influencing people, why we're reaching people with our gumption, our intellectual capacity, our history in studying the physiology, as you demeaned our video editing skills. You guys, a little more conservative, a little more traditional, educational establishment like people. Your guys' behavior is very kind of myopic and limited, and you're sort of afraid to present yourself in some extroverted kind of way, and maybe have confidence issues, among other things. Those are things that I would hope that you could overcome as an individual in your quest to give information out to people, because that's how they accept it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this is why people are on my channel. And if you have a problem with that, Man Medicine, Keith Nichols, if you guys have a problem with that, start putting out correct, targeted solutions where if people execute them, they get resolution of their erectile, libido, and sensation issues on TRT. Because that's my track record. Not 4-hour-long pseudoscience-y lectures that appear legitimate, because the guy presenting is wearing a blazer. Real help that real guys need so that their erectile dysfunction problems on TRT can be resolved. That is what we're trying to do over here. Now, there are more things, but I think that this would go on forever. It's already been, I don't know however long this is after everything gets edited, but it's already taken entirely too much of my day. My day today was planned to do useful, valuable content for my audience, and instead I'm having to defend against two disgruntled, angry people that are upset that I am on the internet giving what is good advice that helps people. I hope that I've cleared up some of the misconceptions about me and my education. I want to make it clear that I have tried to personally reach out to Dr. Keith Nichols based on some commenters on my YouTube channel disparaging him in the comment section. I actually left a voicemail on his clinic's answer machine saying, hey, listen, I'll tell my people, and I've already told them on live streams, whether we agree with you or not, you're a doctor, so please respect Dr. Nichols. To which I got a big, long email response why aromatase inhibitors are bad. And when I tried to respond, my email was blocked. I have all that information, and I'll show you on the screen. So I have tried cordial attempts to reach out to this individual, but it seems that Keith is intent on being angry, exceptionally confused about me, and creating, in some cases, straw man arguments that, I never even posited to begin with. If it is okay with you guys, if it is all right with you, Man Medicine and Keith Nichols, if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to get back to helping men with sexual dysfunction on TRT. I'd like to get back to putting out targeted content that is based on 18 years of research and helping hosts of real men solve their biggest problems. And if it is okay with you, I'd like to proceed upon my journey, not having to take time out of that mission, defending myself against you guys. You have platforms. Use your platforms however you'd like, but I would suggest use your platforms to give people good advice so that they respect you because you've done something positive for their lives, rather than trying to tell them who to believe or not to believe by demeaning other human beings. I think it was a very strange approach to get people to like you. Like, hey, we're just going to put down everybody else so that people can watch us. I think a lot of people, including the people that, came in your comment section and basically made comments with that same theme, expressing that same notion. And for me at this point, I think that's the end of it. I am here to make good, high quality, targeted, useful content for men that are on TRT. I am not here to fucking bicker back and forth with two angry men. Next time you have a problem with me, pick up your goddamn phone and fucking call me. Like I tried to call you, Nichols. Curious why you didn't put that on the web. I guess I'll end on that. Kick ass, rock on, enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Back to the regular schedule of content tomorrow, and I'll see you then.